The dog had 4 minutes left when the Marine made a sound no one else in the building understood. Rain pressed against the narrow windows of the Hawthorne County Animal Shelter, turning the late afternoon sky the color of old steel. Inside the treatment wing, fluorescent lights hummed above clean white walls, stainless steel counters, and a row of quiet kennels that smelled faintly of disinfectant and wet fur. In the last room, a 7-year-old German shepherd lay with his back toward the door. His sable coat had dulled from weeks without proper care, and the dark ridge along his spine looked almost black beneath the cold light. His name on the shelter card was Ranger. No one knew whether it was his real name. No one knew where he had come from. For 11 days, he had refused toys, ignored commands, and watched every open doorway, as if expecting someone who had forgotten the way back. At 4:26, Dr. Emily Carter stood beside the counter reviewing the final paperwork. She was 36, calm under pressure, and known for giving difficult animals more time than most shelters could afford. Still, time had run out. Ranger had not allowed anyone close enough to examine him fully. He did not lunge or snap. He simply withdrew, shutting down one careful inch at a time. Near the electrical panel outside the room, Staff Sergeant Nathan Cole tightened the last screw on a faulty breaker cover. Nathan was 39, a white former United States Marine with short dark brown hair, gray-blue eyes, and a faint scar near his right eyebrow. He now handled maintenance at a veterans center across town and had come to the shelter only because its heating system kept failing. Dogs were not part of his work. He had made sure of that for 7 years. He lifted his wrench from the floor, but the tool slipped from his gloved hand. Metal struck concrete with a sharp ring. The sound echoed down the corridor. Nathan froze. Something old moved through him before thought could stop it. 2 short whistles left his lips, then one long note. His right hand rose and tapped twice against the center of his chest. The signal was quiet. Almost nothing. Yet inside the final kennel, Ranger's head snapped up. Dr. Carter looked toward the door. Nathan lowered his hand, his face suddenly pale. Ranger stood for the first time that day. He turned toward the corridor, ears forward, body low, every muscle focused. Then he moved into a position no shelter worker had ever seen him take. He angled himself between the doorway and the back wall, planted his front paws, and waited without making a sound. Nathan stared through the narrow glass panel. "That is not a shelter command," he said. Dr. Carter stepped beside him. "What did you do?" Nathan did not answer. He opened the door to the treatment room, but stopped several feet from the kennel. Ranger watched his mouth, then his hands, then the empty space over Nathan's shoulder. The dog was not frightened now. He was reading him, measuring him, remembering something. On the counter, the wall clock clicked to 4:27. Megan Brooks, the shelter manager, entered with the final authorization form. "We need to proceed," she said gently. Nathan raised one hand. "Stop everything." Megan studied him. "Do you know this dog?" No, his answer came too quickly. Ranger shifted closer to the kennel gate. The movement exposed his right side beneath the harsh light. A small crescent-shaped scar showed through the fur near his shoulder. Nathan's breath caught. 7 years earlier, another German shepherd had carried a scar in that exact place. Another dog had answered that exact signal in dust, darkness, and silence. Nathan stepped nearer, though he did not touch the latch. Ranger lowered his head, then struck the floor once with his right paw. Nathan felt the old code open inside his chest like a locked room. "Archer," he whispered. The German shepherd did not come forward, but his right ear lifted, and for the first time since entering the shelter, his tail moved once against the concrete. 7 years earlier, Nathan Cole had still believed every promise could be kept if a man held on tightly enough. He and Archer served together in a Marine search unit where silence often mattered more than speech. Archer was younger then, all sable muscle, alert ears, and bright amber eyes that never stopped studying the world. Nathan had trained dogs before, but Archer was different. He did not simply obey commands. He learned patterns, moods, and the smallest changes in Nathan's breathing. Their private signal began during a night exercise when heavy wind swallowed every spoken order. Nathan used 2 short whistles to call Archer's attention, one long note to tell him to hold position, then tapped twice against his chest to mean one thing only. "I am still here." Archer understood after the second attempt. From then on, the code belonged to them. They used it when distance made voices useless, when darkness hid familiar faces, and when Nathan needed Archer to trust what he could not see. The dog would turn toward the signal, find Nathan, then place himself between his handler and the nearest open path. It was never written into a manual. No report mentioned it. No other Marine had reason to remember it. During quiet hours, Nathan added another phrase. Find the blue sky. It meant locate the safest open ground and wait. Archer learned that too. He could find a patch of clear space between vehicles, tents, or damaged walls, then lie down and watch until Nathan reached him. In photographs from those years, Nathan rarely smiled at the camera. Archer always looked at Nathan instead. Their final assignment together began before sunrise under a pale, dust-heavy sky. The unit was helping move personnel and equipment from a remote field site before severe weather closed the route. Nothing about the morning felt unusual until communication became unreliable and the evacuation order came faster than expected. Nathan and Archer were separated from the main group while checking a storage area near the outer road. Nathan sent Archer toward the safest route with the private signal. 2 short whistles. 1 long note. 2 taps against his chest. Archer turned, found the open path, and held his position exactly as trained. Nathan started toward him, but another vehicle arrived and the team leader ordered everyone aboard. Nathan protested. He pointed toward Archer. He said the dog was still waiting. The answer came back that another team would retrieve him. The road was closing. The weather was worsening. There was no time. Nathan climbed aboard because Marines followed orders even when every part of them wanted to remain. Through the rear opening, he saw Archer standing beside the route marker, ears forward, watching the departing vehicle. Nathan repeated the signal one last time. Archer did not move. He trusted him. That was the image Nathan carried home. Not confusion. Not fear. Trust. 2 days later, the official report listed Archer as missing and presumed dead. No body was recovered. No full investigation followed. Nathan asked questions until people stopped returning his calls. He requested transfer records, medical logs, transport manifests, anything that might prove Archer had been found. Every search ended in silence. After leaving the Marine Corps, Nathan stopped working with dogs. He avoided parks where German shepherds trained. He turned down jobs at kennels and security companies. Most of all, he stopped whistling. The code had become a door he could not open without returning to the moment Archer waited and Nathan left. Now, in the Hawthorne County Animal Shelter, that same code had brought a silent dog to his feet. Nathan stood outside the kennel as the wall clock moved to 4:28. Ranger watched him with the stillness of an animal listening across years. Dr. Carter touched Nathan's arm lightly. Who is Archer? Nathan kept his eyes on the dog. The one I never went back for. Dr. Carter lowered the authorization form and looked toward Megan Brooks. Give us 24 hours, Nathan said. Megan glanced at the clock, then at Ranger, who still stood facing Nathan with one ear raised. You have until tomorrow afternoon, she replied. But this cannot become false hope. Nathan nodded. He understood false hope. He had lived inside it for 7 years. The shelter staff cleared the room, leaving only Dr. Carter, Nathan, and the German shepherd. Rain tapped against the windows. The heating vents breathed warm air through the corridor, carrying the scent of clean blankets, metal bowls, and damp fur. Nathan sat on the floor several feet from the kennel gate. He did not call the dog by either name. He did not reach through the bars. Ranger watched him, then slowly turned his head toward the hallway as if checking the nearest exit. Dr. Carter opened the intake file. He was found 11 days ago near the old freight terminal outside town, she said. No tag. No readable microchip. A truck driver saw him resting beneath a loading ramp. Nathan kept his eyes on the dog. Was he injured? No fresh injuries. Underweight. Dehydrated. Worn pads. He had been traveling for a while. She paused. He does not act aggressive. He acts finished. Ranger lowered himself, but did not relax. His chest remained lifted, his body angled toward the door. Nathan recognized the posture. It was not fear. It was duty without an ending. Does he sleep? Only in short stretches. Never with his back to an open doorway. He will not eat if anyone stays in the room. Nathan looked at the untouched bowl inside the kennel. The food had dried around the edges. He is waiting for permission. Dr. Carter studied him. Permission for what? To stop working. The words left Nathan quietly. He removed his work gloves and placed them on the floor. Ranger's eyes followed the movement. Nathan turned his palms upward, showing they were empty. Then he looked away. Minutes passed. A cart rolled somewhere beyond the treatment wing. A telephone rang at the front desk. Ranger stayed where he was. Nathan breathed slowly, keeping his shoulders loose. After nearly half an hour, he heard one soft scrape of a claw against concrete. Ranger had moved closer to the gate. Not much. 6 inches, perhaps. Nathan did not react. Dr. Carter remained beside the counter, silent now. Another 10 minutes passed. Ranger lowered his nose toward the gloves. He inhaled once, then withdrew. Nathan felt a small ache open beneath his ribs. Archer used to inspect every new piece of gear before Nathan touched it. The memory came with the smell of dust, canvas, and sun-warmed leather. He forced himself to stay still. "Can I see what came in with him?" he asked. Dr. Carter left briefly and returned with a clear property bag. Inside were a weathered leather collar, a strip of faded blue cloth, and a bent metal clip. Nathan's attention fixed on the cloth. It was the color of a clear desert morning. Dr. Carter set the bag outside the kennel. Ranger stood immediately. His body changed. The exhaustion remained, but purpose moved through it. He approached the gate and stared at the blue strip. Nathan's mouth went dry. "Where did you find that?" "Tied beneath the collar." Nathan reached for nothing. Instead, he gave one short whistle. Ranger looked at him. Nathan gave a second. The dog stepped forward. Then Nathan released the long note and placed both hands flat against his knees. Ranger froze. For one suspended second, neither moved. Then the German shepherd backed away from the gate, turned toward the far corner, and lowered himself into a perfect waiting position beside the blue cloth. Dr. Carter whispered, "What does that mean?" Nathan's eyes filled, but his voice remained steady. "Find the blue sky." Ranger looked back at him. Yet when Nathan finally said, "Archer," the dog's ears lowered, and he turned his face toward the wall. Nathan did not repeat the name. The German shepherd had answered the signal, recognized the blue cloth, and taken the exact waiting position Archer once used, yet the name itself seemed to close something inside him. Dr. Carter crouched near the property bag, but did not touch it. "Could he have been trained by someone else?" she asked. Nathan watched the dog's reflection in the kennel glass. "Not that way." Still, doubt had entered the room. Memory could turn hope into evidence if a man wanted badly enough. Nathan knew that. He had spent 7 years rebuilding one missing dog from photographs, habits, and regret. He could not force a living animal to become the answer he needed. Megan returned with a folding chair and placed it near the wall. "You can stay tonight," she said. "But he remains under shelter supervision." Nathan nodded. The lights in the treatment wing dimmed after closing. Rain weakened to a soft whisper along the roof. Nathan sat outside the kennel with a canvas bag from his truck resting beside him. He had not opened it in years. Inside were 3 objects: a worn rubber ball, an empty stainless steel bowl, and a small field pouch faded almost gray. None carried a name. None could prove anything. He placed them several feet apart beyond the kennel gate after Dr. Carter unlocked it and stepped back. Ranger remained near the blue cloth. He ignored the ball. He looked once at the bowl, then away. When Nathan placed the field pouch on the floor, the dog's ears rose. He approached slowly, nose working through the air. The pouch still held traces of canvas, dust, machine oil, and the cedar soap Nathan had used during deployment. Ranger stopped inches from it. Nathan kept his hands open on his knees. "Easy," he murmured. The dog took the pouch gently between his teeth and carried it toward the blue cloth. He set it down, then looked at Nathan. Dr. Carter stood in the doorway, barely breathing. Nathan gave the first part of the code. 2 short whistles. Ranger turned toward him. 1 long note. The dog held still. Nathan touched his chest twice. Ranger did not move into cover. Instead, he lowered his head and backed toward the wall. Nathan felt hope fall away. Perhaps the reactions were learned. Perhaps Ranger had served with another handler who used similar cues. Perhaps 7 years had made every familiar gesture look sacred. "That is enough," Dr. Carter said softly. Nathan looked down. Not yet. He reached into the canvas bag and removed the last item, a folded strip of blue fabric cut from an old training marker. He placed it behind the chair, partly hidden from view. "Find the blue sky," he said. Ranger glanced toward the corner, but stayed still. Nathan waited. 1 minute passed. Then another. The dog finally rose, but instead of going to the fabric, he moved toward the gate. He stopped directly in front of Nathan. Close enough now for Nathan to see the silver around his muzzle and the faint tremor in his right foreleg. Ranger lowered his nose to Nathan's left boot. He sniffed once, then stepped back. Nathan's chest tightened. Archer had always started there, but the dog turned away before finishing the old sequence. Dr. Carter checked the time. We should let him rest. Nathan agreed, though the word felt like defeat. As she prepared a quiet room for the night, Ranger shifted beneath the overhead light. The fur near his shoulder parted, revealing a small line of faded numbers beneath the scar. Dr. Carter leaned closer. That was not visible before. Nathan stood. The markings were incomplete, blurred by age, but clear enough to copy. Megan photographed them and sent the image to a military working dog registry contact. An answer came 20 minutes later. The number did not belong to Archer. It matched equipment once assigned to another dog named Mason. Nathan stared at the message until the letters lost shape. Behind him, Ranger lay beside the blue cloth with his face turned away. Then a second message arrived. Mason had died 2 years before Nathan's final mission. The number was not a dog identification at all. It was a transport code from a reused harness. Beneath the first marking, Dr. Carter found one smaller character hidden under the fur. A letter A. The single letter beneath the faded transport code did not prove the dog was Archer, but it was enough to keep Nathan from walking away. Morning arrived slowly over Hawthorne County, pale light gathering along the shelter windows while the rain finally stopped. Ranger remained beside the blue cloth, his body curled tightly, one eye open toward the door. Nathan had not slept. He sat against the wall with his hands resting on his knees, listening to the soft scrape of paws each time the dog adjusted his position. Dr. Carter returned before sunrise carrying coffee and a portable scanner. The registry contact found an archived equipment log, she said. The harness marked with that transport code was reassigned after Mason died. Nathan looked up. To whom? The record is incomplete. She set the scanner beside the kennel. But the next handler listed was attached to your unit. The old ache in Nathan's chest sharpened. Thomas Hale. He reached for his phone. Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Hale answered on the fourth ring, his voice rough with sleep until Nathan said the name Archer. Then the line went silent. Nathan explained the shelter, the code, the blue cloth, and the faded markings beneath Ranger's fur. Thomas did not interrupt. When Nathan finished, he asked one question. Does the dog still favor his right foreleg when he stands? Nathan looked through the gate. Ranger shifted his weight, keeping pressure off that leg. Yes. Thomas exhaled. Send me everything. An hour later, a secure message arrived containing an old photograph. Archer stood beside Nathan near a transport vehicle, younger, stronger, wearing a harness with the same scarred metal clip found in Ranger's property bag. Near the shoulder strap, barely visible, was the letter A written in black marker. Nathan held the image near the kennel glass. Ranger glanced at it, then at Nathan, showing no clear recognition. Dr. Carter warned him gently. A photograph is not memory. I know. Nathan lowered the phone. Neither is a scar. By mid-morning, Thomas drove in from 2 counties away. He was 51 now, broad through the shoulders, with close-cut gray hair and the careful posture of a man who still entered every room by noticing the exits first. Ranger rose when he appeared, but did not approach. Thomas stopped several feet from the kennel and studied him in silence. He looks older than Archer should, Megan said. 7 years without a record can age anything. Thomas replied. Nathan watched his former sergeant kneel. Thomas did not use a name. He placed a closed fist near his chest, opened it slowly, then turned his palm toward the floor. Ranger's eyes followed the movement. That was your signal? Dr. Carter asked. No, Thomas said. Mine was different. Ranger remained still. Thomas lowered his hand. Good. He should not know it. Nathan understood the test. A trained dog might respond to broad military cues, but a personal memory belonged to one handler. Thomas opened an archived deployment file on his tablet. The final transport report listed Archer as missing. A second report, created 3 days later, referred to an unidentified German shepherd transferred from a field medical station to a civilian contractor. The microchip number differed from Archer's by 1 digit. There, Thomas said. Someone entered a 6 instead of an 8. Nathan stared at the screen. A single wrong number had moved a living dog into another file, another truck, another life. Thomas continued through the records. The contractor changed ownership twice. One training facility closed. Another sold its animals without complete transfer documents. The trail ended 4 years earlier. So it could be him, Nathan said. It could, Thomas replied. But records are not enough. Nathan looked at Ranger. Then we stop asking the records. He opened the kennel gate and sat on the floor with his left boot extended, both hands open, his breathing slow. No whistle. No command. No name. Ranger watched him for a long time. Then he rose, crossed the space between them, and placed his right paw carefully on Nathan's left boot. His muzzle touched Nathan's wrist. After that, he turned his back to Nathan and faced the open doorway, standing guard. Thomas closed his eyes. Dr. Carter covered her mouth. Nathan did not move. His voice came out barely above a whisper. You found me. Ranger's ears relaxed for the first time, and a soft sound rose from his chest, not fear, not warning, but recognition finally allowed to breathe. For several seconds, Nathan could not trust himself to move. Archer stood with his back toward him, facing the open doorway exactly as he had done years before, guarding the man he had found again. Thomas Hale stepped away from the kennel and gave them space. Dr. Carter lowered herself into a nearby chair, her eyes fixed on the dog's posture. There was no excitement in the room now, only certainty. Quiet, heavy, real. Nathan reached forward and placed one hand against Archer's shoulder. The dog did not flinch. Beneath the sable fur, Nathan felt the old crescent-shaped scar, the familiar ridge of muscle, and the slight tremor that had always appeared in the right foreleg after long hours of work. Archer, he said again. This time, the name did not close the dog away. Archer turned his head and looked directly at him. His amber eyes were older, clouded at the edges, but the expression within them had not changed. He leaned backward until his side rested against Nathan's chest. Nathan bowed over him, one hand buried in the thick fur at his neck. 7 years of questions pressed into a single breath. I thought you were gone. Archer lowered his head against Nathan's knee. No accusation, no demand, only the steady weight of a partner returning to position. Megan Brooks stood near the treatment counter holding the unsigned authorization form. She tore it carefully down the center and placed both halves in the trash. He is not going anywhere, she said. Dr. Carter began a full medical examination with Nathan beside the table. Archer allowed her to listen to his heart, inspect his paws, and scan the area near his shoulder. He stayed alert, but each time tension returned to his body, Nathan touched his chest twice. Archer would glance toward him and remain still. The old signal was working differently now. It no longer told him to hold ground in danger. It told him the danger had passed. The examination showed dehydration, worn joints, an old untreated strain in the right foreleg, and signs of years spent moving between unfamiliar places. Nothing that could not be treated with time, rest, and patience. Dr. Carter updated the file. She crossed out Ranger and wrote Archer beneath it. Nathan watched the pen move across the page and felt something inside him loosen. A name restored. A life returned to its rightful story. Thomas opened the archived reports again. There is more, he said. He showed Nathan the chain of transfers, the mistyped microchip number, and the final document signed by Colonel David Mercer. The report stated that Archer had been presumed dead after all recovery options were exhausted. Yet another record proved the dog had already reached a field medical station 3 days earlier. Nathan stared at the signature. He knew. Thomas nodded. Maybe not everything, but enough to reopen the file. Nathan looked toward Archer, who rested near his boot, watching the door. Anger came, but it did not arrive loudly. It came as clarity. I want the record corrected. It will be, Thomas said, and I want every transfer traced. Dr. Carter glanced at Nathan. For Archer. For every dog lost behind the same mistake. That afternoon, Nathan signed temporary custody papers while the formal identification process continued. Archer walked beside him through the shelter hallway, slowly at first, then with greater certainty. When they reached the front doors, sunlight broke through the clouds and spread across the wet parking lot. Archer stopped at the threshold. Open space waited beyond. Nathan gave 2 short whistles, 1 long note, then tapped twice against his chest. Archer looked up at him. Nathan opened the door wider. Find the blue sky. Archer stepped outside, but instead of searching for a safe place alone, he remained beside Nathan. Shoulder near leg. 1 pace at a time. For the first time in 7 years, neither of them had to watch the other disappear. The first night at Nathan's house, Archer would not leave the front door. The small rental stood at the edge of Hawthorne, where maple trees bordered a quiet two-lane road and porch lights glowed against the early evening mist. Nathan placed a clean blanket near the couch, filled a stainless steel bowl with water, and left food beside it. Archer ignored everything. He settled on the hardwood floor with his body angled toward the entrance, ears alert, eyes fixed on the narrow line of darkness beneath the door. Nathan recognized the posture. Mission not complete. He sat several feet away and removed his boots slowly, letting the ordinary sounds of home fill the room. The refrigerator hummed. Pipes clicked behind the wall. A pickup passed outside, tires whispering over damp pavement. Archer tracked each sound, but did not rest. Nathan had imagined this return for years, yet now that the dog was beside him, neither of them knew how to stop waiting. "You are off duty," Nathan said quietly. Archer glanced at him, then back at the door. Nathan carried the food bowl closer and sat on the floor. He did not offer it by hand. He simply stayed. After 20 minutes, Archer lowered his nose toward the food. After 30, he ate 3 bites. Nathan looked away to give him privacy. That small courtesy mattered. Archer finished half the bowl, drank, then returned to the doorway. The days that followed became lessons in ordinary life. Nathan opened and closed cabinets so Archer could learn the sounds. He left the porch light on at night. He walked the same route each morning, 1 mile past the maple trees and back. At first, Archer checked every parked car, every alley, every open gate. By the end of the week, he began lifting his nose toward the wind instead. Dr. Carter treated the old strain in his foreleg and prescribed rest, something Archer seemed to consider an unfamiliar command. Nathan placed a blue blanket beside his bed. Archer slept on it only after Nathan moved the blanket where he could see the bedroom door. Progress came in inches. One afternoon, Archer carried the worn rubber ball from Nathan's canvas bag into the kitchen and dropped it near his boot. Nathan stared at it before bending down. "You still remember that?" Archer's tail moved once. Nathan rolled the ball across the floor. Archer followed at a slow trot, brought it back, and placed his paw on Nathan's left boot. The old sequence remained, but now it ended with play. Nathan laughed. The sound surprised both of them. Yet healing did not move in a straight line. Some nights, Nathan woke with his heart racing and the room gone strange around him. For years, he had managed those moments alone, sitting against the wall until the past released him. One night, a storm rolled over Hawthorne. Thunder shook the windows, and Nathan woke on the living room floor without remembering how he had gotten there. His breath came too quickly. His hands would not stop trembling. Archer appeared from the hallway. He did not bark. He crossed the room, placed his right paw on Nathan's left boot, touched his muzzle to Nathan's wrist, then turned his back toward the nearest doorway. Guarding. Waiting. Nathan focused on the warmth against his skin. 1 touch. Breathe. 2 touches. Look down. Stay here. The room returned slowly. The storm became weather instead of memory. Nathan lowered his forehead against Archer's neck. "You did it again," he whispered. Archer leaned into him. In that quiet room, Nathan finally understood the truth the shelter had only begun to reveal. He had not rescued Archer alone. The dog had crossed 7 lost years carrying the same code, waiting for the moment Nathan would need it again. In the weeks that followed, Nathan began to ask questions the old reports had never answered. Thomas Hale helped him trace every transfer, every facility, and every signature connected to Archer's disappearance. The records formed a quiet chain of mistakes. 1 wrong digit in a microchip number. 1 contractor that closed without complete files. 1 transport form copied from an outdated list. Then, at the end of it all, Colonel David Mercer's signature beneath the words presumed dead. Nathan did not want revenge. He wanted the truth placed where silence had been. Mercer agreed to meet at the Veterans Center on a clear Tuesday morning. He arrived in a dark suit, older than Nathan remembered, his posture still formal, but his face marked by the weight of years. Archer sat beside Nathan's left leg in the conference room, calm, watchful, his sable coat catching the pale light from the windows. Mercer looked at the dog before looking at Nathan. "I was told he had not been recovered," he said. Thomas placed the archived field medical report on the table. "He was recovered 3 days later." Mercer read the page slowly. His hand tightened around the edge. This never reached me. Nathan slid forward the second document, the one bearing Mercer's approval to close the case. You had enough to ask again. The room stayed quiet. Archer did not growl. He did not shift. His presence carried more truth than anger could have. Mercer removed his glasses. We were closing dozens of files. The unit was being reorganized. I believed the report in front of me. And when the facts were incomplete, Nathan asked. Mercer looked toward Archer. I chose the easier answer. Nathan felt the words settle between them. Not cruelty. Not hatred. Convenience. The kind of failure that leaves no dramatic mark, only years missing from a life. Correct the record, Nathan said. All of it. Mercer nodded. I will. And open every transfer connected to that contractor. A pause followed. Then Mercer nodded again. The review began that afternoon. Within a month, 3 other retired working dogs were found in county shelters under incorrect records. One had been adopted by a farmer. Another was living with a former handler who had never received official confirmation of its identity. The third was transferred to a rehabilitation program. Archer's story had opened a door larger than Nathan expected. Still, paperwork could not heal everything. At home, Archer continued sleeping near the front door. He woke at the sound of trucks slowing outside. Nathan still checked the clock during storms. Some wounds did not disappear when the truth arrived. They simply stopped being carried alone. One evening, Nathan spread a blue blanket across the living room floor and placed Archer's old field pouch in the center. Find the blue sky, he said softly. Archer looked toward the door, then at Nathan. Instead of moving to the blanket, he walked across the room and rested beside Nathan's chair. Nathan smiled. Close enough. Archer placed his paw over Nathan's boot. The code was changing. No longer a command shaped by distance and fear. It had become permission to remain. Later that week, Dr. Carter called with news. Hawthorne County had approved funding to convert the shelter's unused West Wing into a recovery space for retired working dogs. Megan wanted Nathan to help design the program. Thomas offered to manage military records. Mercer, true to his word, arranged access to archive transfer files. Nathan stood on his porch after the call, watching evening settle over the maple trees. Archer came beside him, shoulder touching his leg. Looks like we have work to do, Nathan said. Archer lifted his head toward the fading blue sky. This time, when Nathan gave 2 short whistles and 1 long note, the dog did not take a guarding position. He simply stayed beside him. 6 months later, the West Wing of the Hawthorne County Animal Shelter no longer felt like a place where stories ended. Sunlight reached through wider windows. Blue blankets rested beside raised beds. Quiet music played near the recovery rooms, and every kennel door carried a card with more than a number. It listed a name, a history, and the words still serving in a different way. Nathan stood near the entrance wearing a plain gray shirt beneath his olive field jacket. Archer sat beside his left boot, older now, slower in the mornings, but steady. His sable coat had regained its shine, and the guarded distance in his amber eyes had softened into something warmer. Dr. Carter moved between rooms checking on the first group of retired working dogs. Megan welcomed volunteers at the front desk. Thomas reviewed military transfer records at a folding table, determined that no missing digit would bury another life. The program had one purpose: pair patient veterans with dogs who no longer needed commands as much as they needed somewhere safe to rest. The first visitor that morning was a young former Marine named Caleb Warren. He was 28, pale, quiet, and unable to step fully through the doorway. He stood beneath the shelter sign with both hands in his jacket pockets, watching a gray-muzzled shepherd mix from across the room. The dog watched him back. Neither moved. Nathan understood that kind of distance. He did not offer advice. He did not say healing would be easy. He simply stood beside Archer and waited. Caleb looked toward them. What if he does not trust me? Nathan glanced down at Archer. Then do not ask for trust today. Caleb's shoulders lowered slightly. What do I ask for? Nothing. Sit where he can see you. Caleb chose a chair near the wall. The older dog remained by the far kennel door. Minutes passed. The room filled with small sounds. Water moving in a bowl. Nails against tile. Morning traffic beyond the windows. Nathan reached into his pocket and touched the faded strip of blue cloth he still carried. Then he gave 2 short whistles. 1 long note. The old code traveled softly through the recovery wing. Archer lifted his head. Years earlier, he would have moved into position and watched the nearest exit. This time, he walked past Nathan. Slowly, deliberately. He crossed the room toward Caleb and stopped beside the young Marine's chair. Caleb held still. Archer placed one paw on his left boot, touched his muzzle to the man's wrist, then turned toward the open doorway. Caleb's breath caught. The gray-muzzled shepherd mix rose from its bed and took one cautious step forward. Nathan felt Thomas move beside him, but neither man spoke. Caleb lowered one hand until it rested near Archer's shoulder. "What does that signal mean?" he asked. Nathan looked at the blue blankets, the open doors, and the dogs learning that rest was not failure. He thought of the final road, the lost files, the shelter clock, and a German shepherd who had carried one private code across 7 missing years. "It used to mean hold your ground," Nathan said. Archer leaned gently against Caleb's leg. The older shelter dog took another step closer. Nathan's voice softened. "Now it means you are not alone." Outside, the clouds opened above Hawthorne, revealing a wide blue sky. Archer turned toward Nathan once, calm and certain, then stayed where he was.